Okay, we're back. Words, students. Here we are. This is our third lecture for lesson 8. We're going to wrap up this lesson, and yeah, it's going to be great. So we left off, the last word of lecture 2 was philos, meaning love. And so now we are going to go to the word phobos, which means fear. So similarly to Kratos, Phobos was originally a god. He was a god who struck fear in people. And I found this picture of, I believe this is meant to be Ares, this guy with the helmet. But this guy with the black face and the weird, I believe that's meant to be Phobos. Where Ares went, Ares was the god of war, and he was the god of destructive, bad, terrible war, unlike Athena, who was the good war. Wherever Ares went, Phobos went because people were terrified of being slaughtered in war. So it's very logical. So he started as a god, but he becomes this abstract noun, fear. So that's where we get our word phobos. So, and we do, I mean, I think, do, I mean, so it's the stem is phobe, but usually, again, I think we most often see this kind of as a combining word or a suffix, which is phobic or phobia, right? Agoraphobia, that's fear of the agora, which is fear of the marketplace, which has come to mean fear of the outside, right? But technically, it means fear of the mall, essentially. Arachnophobia, great, another great movie from the 80s. If you haven't watched it, it's very good. I'm sure you can find it on like Tubi or something. Anyhow, arachnid is a spider, so arachnophobia is fear of spiders. Our book includes the word tech phobic, fear of technology. We're going to talk about techne actually, I think in this lecture, so that'll be fun. Anyhow, you can just attach so phobia is the actual the state or kind of the condition of being afraid of something, and someone who has that phobia is phobic. So that is how that works. Now, here's our next word. Psyche is how this would be pronounced in Greek. Psyche with that psi at the beginning, feminine Greek noun, and we say that, and we say the word psyche all the time, so it's come straight to us. Psyche was also, she was more of a Roman divine figure. There's a really beautiful, oh, she was even divine. There's a really beautiful story by Ovid called about Cupid and Psyche, and Cupid is this little god of love, and Psyche is the woman who falls in love with him, and they have terrible adventures together. But of course, for us, we mainly use the word psyche to indicate the mind. It leads to the word, the stem that we get from this is psych, which, oh, is a very good show from not the 80s. When was that? Like the aughts, like 2010s. Anyhow, my sister is obsessed with that show. Anyhow, so psych, that's the stem, and we use it in a bunch of different ways, right? So psychosomatic. Here it's in these two words, psycho means mind, soma means body. So something that's psychosomatic is something going wrong in your mind that is emphasized, that is revealing itself through your body. So you have a psychosomatic illness. That means there's nothing actually physically wrong with your body, technically, but something in your brain is making you think that there's something wrong with your body, and it's coming out like that. Um, yes, and then psychology is the study of the mind. Psyche, we've already talked about it. And I'm sure you can think of many other ways in which this comes up. Psychic is someone who perceives things with their mind that otherwise your senses can't perceive, that sort of thing. So it's a great word. Scopos. Now, scopos is our next noun. It means observer. It leads to the stem scope. And again, we often, I mean, so we do have a scope, the instrument, like I used a scope to do something on a microscope. Yeah, it's usually a suffix, so an instrument of looking or the process of observing. So scope describes the instrument, scopy describes the process of observing. So telescope is an instrument that can look far. We're going to see tele in just a minute. A microscope is an instrument that could look at small things. And so that's how that works. So our next word is Sophos. So this is Sophia Petrillo, another amazing 80s icon. I'm sorry, I didn't realize how many 80s icons I was using in this lecture. Um, yeah, so the word Sophos, this is an amazing Greek word. It's one of the most important Greek words you could possibly imagine. There is no way I could bring out how this word is used in Greek. It's amazing. But so what we're going to talk about now, we're just going to focus on the fact that sophos is an adjective meaning wise. It gives us the stem soph. So the name Sophia, Sophia was actually a goddess of wisdom. She was much beloved by the Romans. But the way we see this most, I think, now is the word philosopher, which we've already discussed. A philosopher is someone who loves wisdom. We do also in English have the word sophist and sophistry in particular. So these two words are so closely related, and they demonstrate to us how we are still living in a time when a decision and a propaganda put forth by Plato in like 380 BCE, we still have that today. Because in the ancient Greek world, sophists were wise men. It's exactly what it looks like. Sophists were wise men. But the thing that sophists did is they went and they taught in different cities. They would wander around the ancient world and they would teach, but they would take money for their teachings because they had to live, right? Like they were just like wandering professors, but in order to live, they needed to get paid. So that's how sophists existed in the ancient world. Like Protagoras is one of our big sophists, Gorgias, and these were not bad people, but Plato hated them. And Plato could hate them because he was rich and he didn't have to take money for his wisdom. He had his dad's money. So Plato went to great lengths to create the figure of a philosopher, someone who loves wisdom. And Socrates was the best philosopher, the philosopher par excellence. And Plato just said Socrates is the only philosopher. All these people who are taking money are sophists. And the only person we should listen to is a philosopher, i.e., Socrates, and all the sophists we should ignore. And for whatever reason, that division still exists today. So we have philosophy, we have philosophers, they are academics, they are well respected, they are very difficult to read. And when someone speaks dishonestly, we call them a sophist. And we say speaking trickily is sophistry. So I love that. I love that we're still having that debate now, and that in our language, this very petty argument is still here today. Anyhow, so that's Sophos. We'll see it. We'll see it around. Oh, and here's another one actually where I feel like we have a really arbitrary division, but it's not so much coming from Plato or the Greeks. So the word techne is a Greek word and it's a noun meaning art or skill. So for the ancient Greeks, for someone like Plato, a techne was a skill that he contrasted with a knack. So he would describe things like carpentry, which is what I have here, boat making, house building. He would describe those sorts of physical activities in addition to philosophy, in addition to understanding grammar. He would describe those things as a techne, whereas things like baking pastries in particular, or knowing how to hopscotch, those things were considered knacks. And so what's funny is that we have now taken techne, we've taken the same word, and we don't really associate it with a broad swath of skills. I don't think we would look at carpentry as technology, right? We associate technology with tech, with like computer stuff. So we have a similar, but I would argue just as arbitrary division between forms of knowledge, and we privilege the one that we call technology, and the other stuff is like a craft, right? And it's not as serious. And it's completely arbitrary anyhow. So you can think about that, sorry, on your own time. But for this class, the point is that techne, the stem is tech, and this is, of course, where we get technology. Technique clearly comes from the French. And everyone's favorite topic of the day, tech bro. I typed in tech bro into the internet to make sure I wasn't making that up, that it was really a thing. And there was another thing, brawligarchy. I don't know. Anyhow, so you can think about how we use it, but now you know where it came from, where the word came from. And then this is our last stem. It's the adverb tele, so T-E-L-E, coming from this Greek word, and it's an adverb meaning far away. So this is, of course, where we get our stem tele, and this is usually just attached to a different word to indicate something far away. So telephone is a voice from far away. Telework is when you're working from far away. Telecommute is really interesting because it doesn't quite work, right? When you're telecommuting, you're commuting from far away, but you're not really commuting. You're staying at home. So anyhow, I feel like this is a bad word, but people don't use it quite so much anymore. But telecommunication does make sense. Telecommunication is communication from far away. And then telepathy, we're going to learn the word pathos in the next chapter, but telepathy is when you feel something from far away. So someone who's telepathic can feel vibes from a distance, essentially. So that's where tele comes from. Okay, so those are our roots. I hope you love them as much as I do. Clearly, I talk about them too much. We are over the next few chapters, we're gonna learn a lot of suffixes. There's a lot, but in this chapter, there's only a few. In particular, we're learning the suffix IA. Um, so IA in English, but usually it turns into a Y. So in Greek, the word philosophia becomes philosophy. In Greek, the word demokratia becomes democracy. So when you have a Y or every once in a while an IA suffix, you have a noun on your hands. It means process or condition. Usually it indicates that. And so here's our examples: philosophy, psychology, biology. These are all processes of these words. The next suffix in Greek is ikos, which comes to us as ik, which is great, right? Any word, not any word, but most words ending in ic are an adjective, and it's an adjective indicating characteristic. So logic is characteristic of logos, psychic, technically is characteristic of the mind, metric, characteristic of measuring, phobic, characteristic of fear. So that's how that guy works. And then finally, our last one is coming from the Greek word istes. The English suffix is ist, and this creates a noun that indicates a person, right? So sophist is a person concerned with sophos, biologist, person concerned with biology. You get it, cosmologist, etc. So that's how that suffix works. So I think we're close to wrapping it up. Thank you for coming with me. Our book puts out a bunch of what it calls combining forms. And now that I've gone through this lecture, I kind of agree with it. I think if we think of suffixes as little letters that are fundamentally without meaning, that is different than a combining form. But what a combining form is, nouns that we just learned as stems that have discrete meanings on their own that indicate something on their own, but that usually are at the end of a word to complement the first word or something. So I tried to bring them all out as we went through the stems. Everything on page 120 we talked about when we talked about the stems, but you can see them there. But for instance, krasi is a combining form coming from kratos. Logi is a combining form coming from logos, etc. So that's what combining forms are. And so I think that we shouldn't get too precious about it. I think it's going to be clear as we go through the words. All right, yeah, so that's it. So I hope that I hope that I wasn't too weird about all these words. I hope you're excited about the rest of the Greek we have for this module. Because yeah, this is what we're going to be doing for the next module. So and the last module. This is what we're going to be doing for the rest of class. So I'm really excited about it, and I look forward to seeing you when we do lesson 9.